Hi, this is Rainer, founder of The Mindful Leader and host of the Mindful Leader podcast. I have a special guest here today, Siim, and it's really exciting to have him here. He's a self-published, best-selling author, performance coach, author, speaker, but also a biohacker, and still also at a very young age, which is pretty cool. I looked at the podcast, I was actually following it for a while. There is about 265 episodes out there, what I was counting here, so many, many of them. And he wrote really a few good books. I studied one of the books, which is on minerals. It's called The Mineral Fix. But there's other books like Immunity Fix, Stronger by Stress, or the metabolic autophagy. So cool stuff. And maybe we can talk also a little bit about some of the books, because there is really helpful information in all of them. But first, again, welcome, Siim, to have you actually here today. And we can have a good discussion. Maybe you can start a little bit describing your own journey, just where you are, and then we can get started this way.
Yeah, for sure. Like my journey, dates back into, let's say maybe high school, the end of high school, and then I started to just get involved with fitness and bodybuilding and just gym workouts, that sort of thing. After high school, I went through military service here in Estonia, and during that time, I got very interested in like human adaptation. How can humans endure different kinds of physical stressors and psychological stressors as well? And that's what I've always kind of been fascinated by: the cold and the heat and physical exercise and even like fasting and those kind of things. I was already doing some sort of this intermittent fasting in the military, and as well as slightly before that. And so far I've kept on doing this for over 7 years and up to like 8 years by now. I started writing books about these topics in college, in the end of college, and the main kind of reason was that just share my experiences and build my own YouTube channel based upon that, and my blog and the podcast and all kinds of those kind of things. And over the course of the years, I've just gathered like a following and written several additional books, one of the ones that you mentioned. And now I do the same things, plus public speaking and coaching and that kind of thing.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, it's definitely impressive to see the prolific, there's lots of content there. And in particularly, as I mentioned at the beginning, this book around minerals, there's a lot of deep content, also very scientifically validated and everything. It probably was a lot of work, my guess. But it is actually helpful to have a book like this. This is a good example. When I started digging more in the past years into minerals, I couldn't really find a good one way of like where everything is condensed together, right? Because it was clear to me when starting also my own journey on biohacking many years ago, that what you have in the body, right, needs to be it needs to be well maintained in the right dosage, so that at the end of the body has enough building blocks to make things happen. And if there's a shortage on any of them, you'll notice very quickly, right? Maybe share a little bit on this, the motivation for this book, because it's not I wouldn't say it's usually like a fancy topic, because I mean, it's just minerals, right?
Right.
Right. But actually, this is the foundation, I would say, on my experience with biohacking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I co-authored it with Dr. James Di Nicolantonio, and one of his first books was The Salt Fix, that talked about the actual role of sodium and salt in the diet. and kind of refuted some of the say misconceptions about salt intake and things like high blood pressure and that kind of thing. And he gained a lot of like fame from that. And now he like last year he wanted to do, yeah, like people have been asking like, hey, do another book about minerals. Then you had the salt, do the minerals. And so far he hadn't done that yet. And he just, reached out to me to do it together, so to say. And but before we did the mineral fix, we did the immunity fix first. So yeah, the immunity fix came first, and the mineral fix came out this like maybe February or spring, somewhere around there. And yeah, the book, why we would want to write a book about minerals is that, like I said, that the minerals are quite fundamental in the human body, and they run basically every process, starting with energy production, neurotransmitter production, and ending with sleep, relaxation, and blood sugar management, and all those things. They require some minerals, and there are like 17 minerals, essential minerals that we need, and like a lot of people may not be getting the optimal amounts of those minerals when it comes to their food intake. And yeah, like the deficiencies can be quite high, or like quite widespread. So like even like, let's say one in three people may have like up to 10 suboptimal mineral statuses. And yeah, like you don't really notice that immediately. Like it's not going to be that immediate thing that you notice, but over the course of decades, etc., it will have like a quite a negative effect on your quality of life, and as well as like the potential quantity of the life. So yeah, the book is going to teach you all about those minerals, the history, the functions, the science, and the ways to get it, how much, which foods, and in what ratios with the other minerals that you're gonna need.
Yeah, that's quite a complex topics for sure. And so, looking at my audience here for the podcast, there's usually leaders, tech leaders, people working as professionals in the tech field. There is usually a notion of performance or working at a high performance, right? There's a lot deadlines, pressures, all this stuff going on. It's crazy sometimes. As I myself, I worked in the tech industry for more than 20 years. So I know there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, given these audience who are listening now, right? And you mentioned it before, what minerals are doing in terms of being involved in pretty much all metabolic processes in the body. And so there was already, what I heard, some motivation why those leaders should actually care about these minerals. But maybe talking about energy levels. So when I think about leadership performance, right, I immediately think about resilience. I think about energy levels as one of the key basically capabilities that you have to have as a leader, because there's always lots of work that needs to get done. As I said, there could be deadlines or there are deadlines. You have to deliver under pressure, right? And that can lead to quite a, I would say, like a busy or sometimes hectic lifestyle. Maybe share a little bit why those leaders, first of all, should care about minerals, and maybe describe some also of the symptoms to see, because this could be something where they may see themselves already in, oh yeah, that's happening to me. So they can maybe identify also a little bit more with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think I'll start with one of the biggest deficiencies, which is magnesium. And the, let's say, consequences of magnesium deficiency can lead to just, cardiovascular disease and strokes. So that's something that a lot of like high performance already may suffer from because of like excess stress and not sleeping enough and that kind of thing. What research finds is that there's almost like this linear association between magnesium intake and the amount of calcification that your body experiences. So that will just promote atherosclerosis, and which will eventually lead to like cardiovascular disease. So yeah, like not getting enough magnesium will be bad for not the heart health also, but just general stress management and sleep. So magnesium, is involved in like hundreds of processes inside the body. So with energy production and stress management, insulin sensitivity, and that kind of thing. What usually, people may notice is that, they feel like just slightly anxious and jittery every once in a while. Things don't seem like, that everything is fine, or that there's something like subconscious keeping them in this aroused state. So that can be for sure like a magnesium deficiency symptom. But yeah, generally you would need to, you do like a blood test to see like the actual deficiency. And most of the time it's going to be associated with like stress and high blood pressure and just kind of even like, excess, this high blood sugar, that kind of thing.
And you also mentioned impact on sleep quality as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is then, of course, like a vicious cycle, because then you can't sleep and then stress builds up even more. And there's even more than negative consequences on the body and then on the performance the next day. So yeah, I mean, for those listening here, this was one key thing, magnesium, where I'm sure most people heard about magnesium. But actually, you mentioned first there were some symptoms that you described, right, that come with magnesium deficiencies. And prior to that, you mentioned some numbers on how many people are basically deficient. It was a large fraction, right, on magnesium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the approximate amount is somewhere between like 50 to 70% of people may be deficient. And like it depends on the region probably, and it depends on the particular lifestyle. So magnesium is really hard to find in whole foods, because a lot of the soil is also depleted from the minerals, especially like magnesium, and the refining and processing of food will almost destroy all of the magnesium. So refined oils, refined grains, sugars, those things don't have like almost any magnesium. And even the whole foods, the higher sources of magnesium in whole foods are, pumpkin seeds, almonds, hemp protein, those kinds of things, and most people don't really eat them. So that's one of the like biggest reasons why this magnesium deficiency is so widespread. And like stress itself and high blood sugar, that will also lead to this spiral that depletes magnesium further. And that's going to be even worse.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? With this lifestyle, working in leadership or working in general in high tech with deadlines and all this kind of setup, there is a lot of cognitive load, and that needs a lot of magnesium, right? And of course, other minerals as well, but I think we'll pick on this particular one here for now, given its importance. So you have on one side an increased demand, body needs more, but then what you just said is that in typical nutrition, usually you won't get enough. What about like the water intake? Because that's a big one, how you can get also some magnesium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, if it is mineral water, then it does have some magnesium in it. And mineral waters are pretty like good and healthy for you, because they do provide like this very bioavailable source of these minerals. At least like some of them, like it does give you some magnesium, or depends on the mineral water. Some of them give more, some less. But yeah, they have like some calcium, magnesium, potassium, bicarbonate, sodium, maybe some other minor minerals as well. But yeah, you absorb more of the minerals from water, or like a liquid. And that's kind of thing. Like you can absorb the magnesium also through the skin, transdermally. So like salt baths or the spas, those are things. Mineral baths, those do have also like this effect that you absorb those minerals, which is also one of those, like seawater can be something that you absorb through.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of the, so I just did a test on the mineral levels on my tap water at home.
Hmm.
I wanted to see what's actually in there. So it's actually pretty good. I have some water ionizer and filtration system that keeps the good minerals in there, tries to remove all those heavy metals, obviously. And so the test came back, it was definitely quite good. But when I was looking at the magnesium level, I think it was 17 milligrams or so per liter, right?
Hmm.
Which is not necessarily high. I think like these mineral waters that you mentioned, usually I think they have to have at least 100 milligrams per liter to
Hmm.
be recognized as a healing water or something like this, right? And
Hmm.
so, given this this dosage, um, what are in your opinion then in terms of the daily amount of optimal intake of magnesium for, let's say, for this type of leaders, for people who work under in more stressful environments? What would be the optimal intake? And then at the end of the day, how would you actually get to these levels, right? Because what I just said, and just taking the tap water as an example, is not going to cut it. I could probably drink, I don't know, 10 liters or more per day.
Hmm. Yeah, the RDA, the recommended intake for magnesium is like 400 to 420 milligrams, but you may need, up to 500 in some cases. You want to get at least, 400, but yeah, depending on your stress level and depending on your level of insulin resistance and magnesium deficiency, you may need up to, yeah, like 500, or some people, like 1,000 if they want to like replenish their magnesium status. So it depends on the individual. Um,
Mhm.
One, just sign of excess magnesium intake can be just like gastrointestinal problems or diarrhea. So your body will kind of titrate the like ceiling, where you will start to get too much magnesium. And the way to get it is yeah, the foods, like I said, pumpkin seeds or almonds and spinach a little bit, those things, they don't have like a substantial amount. It would be good to like drink some mineral water if you have like a good brand that has over 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams, something like that. So you could easily, yeah, like get the majority that you need with that. But using some sort of a magnesium supplement is also a great option, because it's simple, and it's kind of something that you get out of the way, if that makes sense.
Mhm. So from the numbers, what I'm hearing is so probably 500-600 milligram could be a good daily dosage. And of course, if you have deficiencies, it could even be higher to fill it up again over a few weeks, probably, or at least my guess.
Hmm.
My experience, it's very tedious to fill these levels up. It's not that straightforward. And you mentioned another point, which is, oh yeah, it's not that easy that, for instance, you just go there and find some magnesium supplement and you just pop the pills in there and say that's it. It's unfortunately it's not going to work like this, because you're quickly hitting the ceiling if you're taking too much at once.
Hmm.
You can probably run to the toilet very quickly. And so it's a tricky part. So if people say, well, my water isn't that great, there's not that much magnesium in there, maybe I'll try to get some healing water and with a higher magnesium, basically minerals in there. But uh, and of course, if you're not eating processed food, but you're trying to eat basically wholesome organic food, you may get some cover a little bit, or maybe half of it. Who knows?
Hmm.
It's something to figure out, right? But if they go for the supplement, I mentioned already a few pitfalls. Could you share some practical tips how to approach this topic? Because that's actually another quite complex one.
Hmm. Yeah, well, generally you can like there are different types of magnesium, or like different chelates that it is attached to, and they also have, let's say, different regions of the body that they affect. So there's magnesium L-threonate that is mostly used by the brain. There's orotate for the heart, taurate for the heart, malate for energy production, citrate for the gut. So yeah, like different types of it. generally you could use any kind of magnesium, and you will still raise your magnesium status with that. It's just that some absorb a bit better and some have like a worse poor or like a bit worse bioavailability. So yeah, like generally you can easily, if you take like a sufficient amount as a supplement, it doesn't really matter what type it is. So eventually you can just reach it easily. But yeah, there are like some better ones. Like the better ones are the L-threonate, orotate, malate, taurate, bisglycinate are kind of the better ones. The best ones and the worst ones would be like oxide or citrate, ascorbatate, those kinds of things. Yeah. So yeah, my favorite ones are taurate, bisglycinate, orotate, and L-threonate.
Yeah, those are good ones. Unfortunately, I haven't. I was experimenting with all kind of different magnesium supplements over the past years. There are a few good ones now available that mix those things nicely up, so make it simple, right? Because you don't want to think about all those different 7, 8, or how many different forms. You want to keep it simple. It's unfortunate if you want to get like the L-threonate that you just mentioned, which is good for the brain, so to fill up magnesium levels in the brain. Unfortunately, I haven't seen a mix of threonate combined with all the other forms or most of the other forms. So it's still a little bit tricky that you have to do a little bit of search, and at the end you may end up taking 1, 2, or 3 different types of magnesium if you really want to go fancy and optimize it. Have you found a better solution on this yet?
Well, the magnesium that I'm taking is a magnesium breakthrough that has 7 different types of magnesium in it. So it has orotate, bisglycinate, malate, some other ones as well. So yeah, that's one of the best solutions that I'm using at the moment. So yeah, I may go through like some periods where I'm using only like citrate, or if I'm using only bisglycinate or something. So yeah, generally like I'm not super concerned with that, because I do think that my natural magnesium intake is also like relatively high.
Yeah, no, and that's a good one. I taking it myself. We put a link in the show notes to all that stuff, so people can figure it out. It's from the Biooptimizers, and I actually had asked them the same question around. So they have this nice mix and everything, but then there is no threonate in there because of some. They had some, it's basically maybe licensing, or I forgot what it was. There was an issue that they couldn't put it in there, and so now I need to get my threonate still from a different brand and combine it. So it's a little bit tricky. But anyhow, I mean, so the idea in general is, okay, you could start with some supplementation, try to eat more of the foods, try to figure out a good kind of mineral water, what you were suggesting as well, to get to this at least 400 to 600 probably milligrams per day. The key thing, however, is going even before this, when you said, oh yeah, let's figure out, am I actually deficient in magnesium? That's another tricky question, because if you were to go now to the doctor and let's say do some blood work, I mean, what's your experience there? It's not an easy call, right? Because depending on those levels, for instance, if you measure it in serum blood.
Yeah, like that can be misleading. The best one generally is the red blood cell magnesium. So that would be like the most indication of the magnesium that's actually being inside the body or used. The hair mineral can also be that you're excreting the magnesium. So yeah, I think the red blood cell is kind of the gold standard for magnesium.
So recommendation here would be anyhow to basically run a lab test, see what's there, and if the amount is probably more on the lower side, it's clear there is some deficiency. Then the question is, how severe is it? And then basically getting started with the combination of water, mineral water, some food, and possibly some supplements, right? And doing this, if someone actually has deficiency, they should see relatively quickly results, right? What's your experience there? How long does it take if you try to get actually to these 400, 500, 600 milligrams per day? How
Mhm.
fast do you see changes?
Well, it depends on the severity of the deficiency and the health of the person. Well, magnesium works like pretty fast. Like if you take like a large dose, like 1,000 milligrams or 600 milligrams in one sitting, then you will like notice a substantial difference, even like 30 minutes or an hour later. So yeah, I think that it does work pretty fast, at least in terms of the absorption and some of the physiological effects that you experience. To let's say fully replenish, let's say, deficiency in magnesium, or to have like this reversal of atherosclerosis or calcification, then that would take a bit longer. But yeah, like the effects are both short term and long term.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned, I think, taking one big dose. Usually, I think if you can. So what I also experimented with is basically splitting it up over the day to like a lot of small dosages in terms of yeah, getting more continuous stream of magnesium in. Are there considerations when the best time basically on over the day? What do you recommend, like for people? Morning, evening, all in between, with meals, without meals? What's your recommendation there?
Well, usually it's not good to take it with a fatty meal, because the fat reduces the absorption of magnesium. So taking it on an empty stomach is really good, actually. So yeah, either like in the morning or in the evening is the best time to take it. So yeah, like in the evening it will help with the relaxation and sleep. In the morning it would be also like maybe beneficial if you have like a high blood sugar or something that um, the coffee, for example, it does make you lose a bit magnesium, but not like a large amount. You lose mostly like sodium through coffee and urination, but not enough for magnesium. So yeah, I think it's safe to take like on an empty stomach on any time.
Mm. It's a good thing. There is one thing maybe to point out. There is a relationship also with other minerals like calcium, right? I
Mhm.
think so. Let's say you take too much magnesium, it has an impact on calcium levels as well, right?
Well, usually, yeah, like the excess calcium in relation to magnesium is gonna be like bad because of promoting calcification and atherosclerosis. Um, but like too much magnesium, or like a lot more magnesium than calcium, generally doesn't have like any real like bad side effects. So
Okay.
yeah, it's much worse the other way around, where you're getting not enough magnesium and more calcium.
Yeah. I mean, clear the guidance in general is what I learned over the years is also calcium. You basically don't want to actually supplement. There is usually enough in
Hmm.
food. So
Yeah.
the shortage usually is the magnesium, right? And
Hmm.
with the numbers that you mentioned before, there is a high probability that any listener now who is listening to this has one of these magnesium deficiencies. And it looks like there is an easy fix to do it. It's not that complicated, but it requires definitely some commitment because you have to do it regularly, right? If you just do it once or twice, then you forget about it. Maybe supplements go in some box in the closet, and then you never think about it again. You're in a week or two, you're back where you were before, right? So that's one of the hard things, is how to integrate it into your daily routine, basically.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now I think we have covered a lot of magnesium. I think this is very actionable stuff. We'll put the links there for sure. But going back to the topic of leadership performance, so magnesium definitely will do the trick to help with some of those symptoms that you mentioned before. But usually there is more, right, to increasing leadership performance, and particularly talking about resilience. and energy levels, right? What are the other categories? And of course, we know there is sleep, there's exercise, there's nutrition. Those are the big ones. But let's dig in a little bit deeper on practical things one can do to improve, performance, basically.
Mm-hmm. You in terms of like mental performance things?
Yeah, mental performance, but in general performance, right? It's not just the mental performance, but people have to basically, have to be very active. There can be lots of meetings, running around in large office spaces, right? And so it's definitely an impact for sure. I would say in the majority is on mental performance. But if you think about performance, as I said, in terms of resilience and energy levels, and then looking at these three categories, maybe for each category, we can deep dive a little bit and see if there's some low-hanging fruits that listeners to this podcast can basically take out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, well, I do think that performance itself requires a lot of optimal recovery. So to perform at your best during daytime, then you also need to sleep best at nighttime. So yeah, that means going to bed at the right time and getting the right hours of sleep, because yeah, your body and brain, both of them repair themselves during sleep. You create new connections in the brain, and you clear out the toxins, etc. So if you are, like, say, not sleeping enough, then your concentration declines, your focus declines, you get more angry easily, you flip off more easily. So yeah, I think that you essentially need to have adequate sleep to perform at your best. So that's kind of the kind of the foundation. Other things for performing at your peak would be, there's of course, just being fit and healthy is also like a key component, because your body, it's requires to be exerted to a certain extent with exercise to stay healthy. And the exercise also has been found to have like profound effects on the brain. So it increases neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, helps with depression, helps with all different kinds of things. So it's one of the best like forms of medicine or drugs that there is to help with just feeling and being great. So I think that if people do regular exercise, then or especially like immediately after exercise, then you do notice like a small high in terms of your alertness and focus, because you invigorated yourself, you increased like adrenaline and all these slight stress hormones, but they do have like a positive effect on your performance in the short term, because of putting yourself into the zone, or acutely making you more alert in the particular moment. So I think sleeping well, exercising, and lastly would also be some aspects of, let's say, nutrition in essence, but that nutrition can also include supplementation and nootropics or things like that. But I think that the most important thing is some sort of a diet that doesn't cloud your thinking. Like a lot of people may just experience suboptimal cognition because of their brain is not getting enough energy, or they're getting like distracted by cravings and hunger signals. So if you're struggling with, or if you can't focus on like a meeting without thinking about food or something like that, then that can be certainly a huge issue. So a diet that helps to dissolve that should be something that keeps your blood sugar relatively stable, doesn't make you crave certain foods, junk foods, and also provides this stable energy, source of energy. So usually like a super high, like a high carbohydrate meal will lead to some sort of a drop off after the blood sugar rush has gone through, your insulin crashes, and you're finding yourself in this situation where you want to take a nap after lunch, for example. And that's mostly the result of this blood sugar crash. And you can avoid that by just blunting that blood sugar response a little bit, eating more fibrous foods, high protein foods with some healthy fats, and that would balance the blood sugar. That will also balance the energy levels, and also like keeps you in the zone for longer. So it's a good idea to teach your body to be very like energy efficient and more energy like resourceful, so that you don't need to be snacking all the time.
Yeah, and that's for sure an issue, that all those things that you mentioned, the crash, right? People snacking, there's more sugar and all that stuff. Yeah, and that makes things worse. Now, my experience, a ketogenic diet with some carb cycling combined with intermittent fasting is probably within the biohacking community, I would say mostly the standard. And
Mhm.
what's your favorite approach? Looking personally, what do you eat basically?
Yeah, I do also some sort of a carb cycling strategy. I eat lower carbs on most days, and I eat carbs basically based upon my physical activity. So if I am exercising a lot more, then I'll eat more carbs. But most of the time, I do stay lower carb, just eating vegetables, proteins, meats, tubers, maybe berries. And but if I do eat carbs, then I'll still eat potatoes and some of the kind of starchier carbs and fruit maybe.
Yeah, that's fruit is always good, but of course not too much of it is as well. So I think that the guidance what I read was about 50% fat, maybe 20% something plus protein, the rest carbs. Is that something you also think on average makes sense?
Uh, well, like for the percentages, then the research finds that for like weight loss, at least a high protein diet, somewhere between like 30 to 35% as protein,
Mm.
is almost always like does best, because you protein is very thermogenic, and you burn a lot of calories and very satiating. So yeah, the optimal amount of protein is somewhere around like 30%, 35%, somewhere there. And yeah, the rest of them from either carbs or fats. And
Mm.
the fat percentage, those fat and carb percentages are very like subjective. For ketogenic diet, then yeah, you would need to be eating only like 5% carbs. But from some other, you don't need to be that low in carbs to see those ketogenic benefits. You can still see those mental clarity benefits and energy benefits, even if you're eating only let's say 30% carbs or something. That I personally, if I were to guess, then my percentages are somewhere between like 35% protein, maybe even 40 sometimes, and 30% carbs, 30% fat
Oh,
almost.
okay, good.
Yeah,
Also higher in the protein intake.
yeah.
Okay, that's good. Now, if as you already is when we start talking about this, the topic of nutrition is also quite complex. Is there maybe a good book that you could recommend here for someone getting started, right? Because I could see that some of the leaders and listeners in this area, when they hear the term ketogenic diet, maybe they basically it rings a bell that there was something with fat or some more fat. And but if you actually want to get started and educate yourself and dig in deeper into this, like a getting started guide or something on this topic of ketogenic diet.
Mhm.
And any pointers or many even resources on your side that you can share?
Yeah, well, one of my books, Metabolic Autophagy, talks about ketosis and intermittent fasting, plus the carb cycling and yeah, macros and all those different things. So I think that is the kind of one of the best sources for that.
Very good. Yeah, that because that's I haven't read it yet. It's it's in, on my list in the basically in the Kindle to get to it. I'm still working on the mineral topics, but yeah, that metabolic autophagy is a good one. And we'll put links in the show notes. Now go back to the topic of fasting, intermittent fasting, because those are so closely related, right? It's like a
Mhm.
lifestyle. It's basically this combination. Could you share a little bit on this experience around the intermittent fasting and maybe how to get started with some simple things?
Yeah, well, intermittent fasting is a way of eating where you confine your eating window in a certain time frame. Usually, people just skip breakfast and eat 2 meals a day. And the idea is that by doing that, then you're kind of of course it saves time, but it also has some, let's say, health metabolic effects. And most of it has to do with helping with this energy production. Your body gets used to more of its own body fat, so you don't need to eat that often. You actually, eventually you will also lose some of the hunger, and you become, let's say, more less dependent of frequent meals and snacking, both physiologically as well as habitually, psychologically. There's also, like, longevity benefits. It lowers blood sugar, it lowers the blood pressure, lowers insulin, activate some of, like, longevity pathways in the body. So yeah, both from a performance perspective and a health perspective, it's pretty good. There is also research, fasting benefits the brain, improves concentration, and improves neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, those kind of things. So yeah, like in an office work setting, I think some sort of intermittent fasting can also be like a good strategy because of those reasons: more stable energy, lower blood sugar, and more stable, like, focus and concentration as well. It's of course you can overdo it for sure, but some sort of, at least like skipping snacking is a good thing to kind of keep in mind.
And that looks like it's an easy thing to implement, right? I mean, skipping breakfast, why not, right? Now, so let's say one of the listeners says, "Oh yeah, cool, I want to get started. I'll skip breakfast. If I could do it maybe 2 or 3 times a week, would that be a good start?"
Yeah, of course, you don't have to jump head in, and you're gonna have, like, a much harder time doing that. So yeah, like, you're used to eating several times a day, and then you stop doing that, then you will experience more of these hunger pains and more discomfort. So yeah, the kind of smarter approach would be to gradually, ease off from that. I would start with just, skipping the snacks. So you don't even have to skip a meal. You just skip the snacks and spontaneous eating. And by doing that, you will automatically cut down a few hundred calories in your daily intake, and also, like, start to notice, like, okay, is this actually why I'm hungry, or what is the reason why I'm hungry, or is it just some sort of like a trick that my mind is playing, or am I bored or something like that? And once you learn to differentiate between that, like actual hunger and psychological hunger, then yeah, it's gonna become it's gonna be much easier for your body to also start to use its own body fat, and get into this like a more ketotic state on a habitual basis.
Yeah, it requires some higher level awareness, body awareness, actually, to feel into the body and really understand, is it now real hunger? Do I need something, or is it just what my basically my mind makes up, some cravings that are triggered by whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit tricky, but skipping some snacks, maybe skipping breakfast seems like a good strategy. Now, what if someone says, well, I could, the snacks I see, that makes sense. I'll try the breakfast, but I tried it before, and at 10 o'clock I have meetings going on. I really need to deliver. I need full mental energy. And I'm just afraid if I skip my breakfast, I might be now in some cravings, low energy, brain fog. In any tricks to that can help in that case to not break the fast but still get energy levels up?
Well, a lot of, like, entrepreneurs do this bulletproof coffee, that they drink this coffee, regular coffee, with a bit of like MCT oil and butter, which does sustain some of the effects of the fast, and it's not going to kick you out of a full fast state. So that is something that most people do, and it does, satiate you and gives you energy as well. Yeah, that's you can try, like, but of course you can just initially begin doing that fasting on, like, a weekend or something like that, or at least on those days where you don't have some sort of a crazy schedule or a really important appointment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, bulletproof coffee and all kind of variations of it is works very well based on my own experience, and it's very healthy. It doesn't break the fast. Now, for people then who leaders want to go deeper into this whole topic of intermittent fasting, I remember there's actually also a free guide on your website, right?
Yeah, it is.
See, there's a lot of cool stuff. So we'll link to this. There's also, I remember, a guide for better sleeping
Mm-hmm.
people can get. Now, there is also a autophagy activation cheat sheet. Now, people may not have heard the term autophagy before, and there's also your book about metabolic autophagy, right? But now we're talking also about health benefits, longevity. Maybe give a short summary around why people should care about autophagy, actually.
Yeah, well, autophagy is this intercellular process of cleanup. So it eliminates junk material, debris, and the dysfunctional cell parts. With aging, you see there's more accumulation of these things, and with regular autophagy, you can clean it out and thus have like a beneficial effect on longevity. Of course, there's different ways to activate autophagy. You don't need to fast to do that. You can also just do exercise, saunas, cold exposure, coffee does it, calorie restriction by itself, and different kinds of plant polyphenols have this beneficial effect on autophagy. But yeah, in the book Metabolic Autophagy, I talk about the way to do it, of what is kind of the some good principles to follow. And but yeah, you don't want to be too much autophagy either. Like excess autophagy can be bad for some other things.
Yeah, and it's at the end, what you see is basically bringing this all together, right? I mean, I'm doing biohacking for many years, but I started more with training the mind. This was the first thing, becoming more aware, building up awareness. That helped me a lot to actually be able to increase body awareness and listen to my body. And then, yeah, there's so many topics out there. I mean, even like in this short podcast, we touched on magnesium as one example of a mineral, and there's plenty of minerals, there's vitamins. There is the topic of sleep, there's a topic of exercise, there's a topic of nutrition, intermittent fasting, and there's many more topics once you go into this world of optimizing your body and mind, right? And so we can only touch on a few things, but at the end, it is what I learned. It's a process of figuring out on a personal level what works and what doesn't work. How do you approach this in terms of some new habit or some let's say there is a new form of magnesium coming out, or there is a new thing that you heard about? How do you fit it into this big puzzle and make it easy so that at the end of the day, this is something that is manageable? Right?
Well, I think that you shouldn't get like this shiny object syndrome, that you're trying to implement all these coolest things, newest things that you come across, because chances are they're not going to be the biggest things that move the biggest stones. Usually the fundamentals are the most important thing: sleep, exercise, a good diet, maybe some saunas and exercise, like fasting and those kind of things, can also fall into this category. And supplementation and yeah, like different gadgets, they can be for sure effective. Depends on the gadget, but they shouldn't be something that you think that can compensate for the healthy lifestyle. Like the foundations have to be in place before the additional things can actually reach their fullest potential, so to say.
Any wearable tech or trackers that you recommend that you use yourself that help you keep track of things?
Yeah, well, the only real tracker I use is the Oura Ring, so measures sleep. I've also used like the continuous glucose monitor in the past, so that's also a good thing to kind of know your blood sugar levels. But yeah, I think that's the one that I'm using. I've never been like a huge tracker, but I do think that some things are like sleep and blood sugar can be good.
And that, I think this is keep it simple, as you said, right? I think the Oura Ring, if you do one thing and you don't have an Oura Ring, this would be definitely worthwhile investment, because you learn so much about your body and sleep. Because without data, how do you know how to optimize? I mean, this is science-based, based on data. This is the idea also behind biohacking, is systematic approach. You need numbers. Show me the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, ordering and the CGM, continuous glucose monitor. I think I would also agree. I would recommend to everyone listening to this, get curious about it, about what your blood sugar is actually doing, how you react to different meals. You may be surprised. I was when I did it the first time. I remember I went to some Indian place once, and I had some vegetable meal there with some rice, right? And said, "Oh yeah, that looks like pretty healthy, right? Veggies, some rice." And
Mhm.
then the CGM, then I was looking at the data, like half an hour later, I see this huge spike going
Mhm.
up. This was for 4 or 5 hours. It was crazy, right? And then
Mhm.
I realized, oh yeah, there was this sauce and all that stuff in there. So my guess was plenty of sugar, which I didn't even think about, right?
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, anyhow. So I think this is a good one that you bring this up, the CGM, continuous glucose monitors. They're available. There's different sorts. We can also bring a link to one or two when people can play with. Okay, no, that's great. So there's a lot of actionable insights, and I think we're coming to the end now as well. I think the pointers that you provided and that we're going to add, like the starting guides, the books, and all those things, I think are great resources for someone basically to getting started.
Mhm.
And maybe the last on your side, the last comment, what would be after listening to this one final recommendation for those tech leaders where you say this is something where you say get some action on?
Yeah. Well, I think prevention is the best medicine. So getting some sort of blood work done to see what your biomarkers are, because yeah, things like you don't notice things like high blood pressure or high blood sugar. You have to kind of test them and see, so you can easily make the best changes to your lifestyle. So maybe you do need to reduce your carb intake to help with the blood sugar, or maybe you need to exercise more. So yeah, I think the blood test for checkup is going to be a good thing.
Mhm. So the message is basically start measuring, right? Which
Yeah.
is a good one because engineers, techies, they're usually into analytics, into numbers and data. So it's basically starting to become more proactive on his or her own body, right? With data, with numbers.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a good starting point. Agree. So thanks again, Siim, for being here and sharing all these cool insights.
Yeah, no
And
problem.
and we'll definitely put out the links so that people can check it out.
Awesome. Thanks.